Yo, yo, yo. Hey, guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show. You ever thought to yourself, what makes a great practice a great practice? Well, there's a lot of things. Today, we're going to uncover one of the secrets to a great practice. It's called efficiency, and how great practices do that. They do that with checklists. And I have two amazing coaches on today, Miranda Beeson and Carlie Einarson, and we share the secrets behind some of the best practices and how they do it with checklists. So please listen up. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast. Our goal around here is to give you great information so you can create a better practice and a better life. That's what I do. I bring on the best thinkers, teachers, coaches anywhere in the world so you can consume this great information. You can go back to your practice and make great things happen. I have two amazing coaches on today, Miranda Beeson and Carlie Einarson, and we're going to be talking about the secret to efficiency. It's called the checklist. Bam, there it is. Miranda, Carlie, thanks for being on. I appreciate both of you.
Thank you so much for having us. We're excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. Very excited.
Awesome. Now, let's let everybody know a few things if you didn't know this already. We're a coaching company. So here's what we do. We coach really good practices, great practices all over the country who get stuck. You know, they're growing and they don't know how to make things better. So this is what we do all day long. We coach great dental teams on how to break that ceiling that they're dealing with all the time. And this becomes a major component. Why is this so important? Miranda.
So as we said here, the secret to efficiency, one of the reasons the checklist is so important is efficiency. Checklists help us to organize tasks, helps to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, and that overall just reduces our overall stress and creates smoother operations. There's byproducts of it as well. We're going to be able to promote patient safety. When you have a checklist, nothing's falling through the cracks, we're less likely to reduce our quality of care or have inconsistencies around mistakes or things that might happen in the office that could negatively impact a patient. And we have to adhere to regulatory compliances. So from a standpoint of compliancy practice, making sure the practice environment is safe consistently, when you have a checklist, especially when you're working on procedures chair side, it's going to help with that as well. But the biggest thing is around accountability and efficiency in the practice. Carlie, maybe you can speak to checklists and accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it helps our team members have roles and responsibilities and clarify the tasks in the office. And it is a living, breathing document that can always be changed. I really love to laminate the checklist, have it available out ready for every single team member to be able to use. And it's always living, breathing, so we can always change it, adjust it, and it helps so that we don't micromanage as much. And it just keeps everybody on the same page. So I think they're amazing.
Yeah, so well said. And there's multiple benefits to why you create a checklist. If you've ever read the book, Checklist Manifesto by Atul Gawande, you will see it's a research project. And the research project was, how do we scale excellence in hospitals, most specifically around surgery? And they couldn't because they were run by human beings. Now, that's the key piece. You got to remember, if you're a dentist listening, I want you to repeat this to yourself. I work with humans. These are normal people, and we as humans don't have the capacity or ability to be perfect every time. And the better you get, the more steps and the more specific you're going to be. And if you can work with your team and get some clarity around this, and I work with you and I'm your assistant, I can become your biggest advocate in helping get these things done the way you get them done. And it also makes me free up some brain space. When I have a checklist, I don't have to think about what I'm doing as much. The cognitive rigor that goes with any of these processes is too much, especially for somebody like me. I can't think. I got to look at a box and check a box, and people like checking boxes. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. You can finish them. It feels like we're getting something done, right?
Absolutely. And they're replicable. So it can be part of your onboarding process when you have these checklists. When you have somebody, when you mentioned the part about people, and when we're people dependent, it's really, really hard when people come and go. What if Jane has to move, and Jane has been an amazing patient care coordinator for you for 5 years, and now we have to bring on someone new, but Jane has everything in her brain that she does every day, day in and day out. It's a replicable resource to have a checklist. So the next person that comes on board, it's not so people dependent. It is more systems dependent. And now Susie, who joined your team, can use her personality to stand out in your practice, not just her knowledge base. And so we love people in the practice, and we want people to bring who they are to our team. We don't want it to be a source of responsibility for them to navigate everything. It's a system-based process. And when you always say we rely on the people to work the systems. You say it better than me. But yeah, it's replicable, and it creates efficiency in the practice. So I'm excited to share a little bit about how we create them and how we incorporate them and help people to be more efficient day after day.
Yeah, not only you're an amazing coach, I didn't know you were a rhymer. You said Jane's got an inner brain. I'm like, this is pretty cool. We could create some rhymes.
The mad rapper, watch out.
Yeah, you are. But let me go back to this. If you have Jane and she has everything in her brain, what happens is you go insane. Look at that. So, no, here's what happens. Jane leaves. She has it all in her brain. And then you look for another Jane. So think about long term when you can take what she has and you can put it down into a checklist. I know, and I'll be the first to admit, it's so easy just to hire somebody that's going to do it all the time. That way I don't have to think about it. But you have to think better. You're going to create something sustainable, growable in some capacity, and you don't want to be left with 2 resumes and choosing the least worst option because Jane took the whole practice with her. Part of creating a healthy practice long-term is you create a predictable, repeatable, structure and process so that even somebody who hasn't been really well developed in that role can come in and say, I can do this, right?
Absolutely. Yep.
It also comes into play too, even when we're working together as a team, because you can have the system checklist and people are not redoing the same tasks that the other person right next to them just did, because we have it on paper and we're all reading it, checking it off, and it helps work together. So we're being efficient.
Oh, you just hit a home run on that one. Nothing makes you crazier than when people are redoing what you already did and we're doing it again and again and again. So well
Carlie
said.
just hit a really important point too. Teams will often ask this. You have a couple of coaches on, so we'll give you some anecdotal experience here. Teams will often ask, so we made that checklist. Should we have that out? I'm like, yes, you do want to use the checklist that you make on a daily basis, for sure. That's a big piece of this, is actually utilizing. We don't want to write it down just to document it, because yes, if it's not written down, it doesn't exist. We always want to document systems. We want to have something as a written resource that we can work from always. But with a checklist, it's a little bit different than a system. A checklist is intended to be utilized on a daily basis. So like Carlie said, it's out every single day, whether it's laminated and you're using dry erase markers, or it's a legit piece of paper that you're shredding or repurposing as scratch paper at the end of the day. We want to make sure that we're using the daily checklist. Do you run into that too, Carlie, with teams that make them and then aren't sure if they should use them or not?
Absolutely. And I agree with that completely. They don't always use them. They're not always out. And I think at a certain point, even though a checklist is amazing, it can get a little stale. So I do really love that it's living, breathing, and we can always update and change it, because we are changing all the time and we are growing and getting better. So with a little bit of the changes makes it so that it's not stale and everybody still goes through each line item and uses it with it being out in front of them.
Yeah. And I'm going to be the dentist listening who's been doing this for long. Okay, listen, I hear what both of you are saying. But I've never been, we started this thing, we created checklists. So how do I create effective checklists? Where do I even start?
So you have to start by prioritizing the tasks that are most important. Maybe you start with what's most important and what you're doing most frequently. So you can focus on the key activities that contribute to patient care the most. Personally, I like for administrative team members and I like them for chairside procedures for dental assistants first. I think hygienists, there's being a hygienist, there's a little more monotony to our day. There's not as much variation, to be completely honest. Could they function in the hygiene department? Absolutely. But I think that for most offices, if you look at prioritizing departmentally, what do we do the most frequently? And then what provides the most impact or importance contributing to our patient care? And you could sit as a team and you could list everything out. And then you can say, okay, this one we all agree is the most important. Let's start here.
Yeah.
But that's the most important piece.
Totally. Carlie, any thoughts you have?
I love having a checklist. I know, Miranda, you said hygiene gets a little monotonous, and I do agree, but I love having a checklist for everybody so that everybody is involved and everybody is held accountable, So even if it's a back office checklist that the hygienists help with for AM, PM, closing down the office, how many times have we left the office and been like, oh my gosh, I forgot to do X, Y, and Z. And if it's on the checklist, then you know you did it. And it helps with the headache. So you know you're coming in and you're going to have a very productive, smooth day the next day because everything was completed the evening before.
How many times have you left the office and then in the office group chat, did somebody turn the pumps off? Did anybody turn the switch? And then someone's driving back up to the office to see if the pumps and the compressor got turned off. But if we have a PM checklist that hangs by the back door, it's physical, then we know, okay, the last person that walks out can look and say, yes, got it. We checked that box. It's turned off.
Yeah. Now there's thousands of you that listen to this podcast, and there's some dentist who's like, that happened yesterday.
Every day.
So we teach a concept here. Don't be frustrated, be fascinated. So if that happens to you regularly, I'm going to ask you to just change your brain and go, I'm fascinated. Wow, I've been doing this a long time. That happened again. And what we also teach is don't blame a person, blame a system or a checklist, because now you can start to calm yourself and you can start to fix these problems so they don't keep. Hey, listen, it's okay to make a mistake, but when it keeps repeating, that's stupid. So fix it permanently. And what you can do with these checklists is you can calibrate through them. So if you're like a lot of people, you're like trying to tell your team members, I told them. Don't tell them anything. Create a checklist. And then what you do is you calibrate through it. It's written down. If it isn't written down, it doesn't exist. Now we can all agree that this is the best way to do it. Don't you agree? And don't underestimate the brilliance of your team members. Your team members know a lot of stuff. They say we're missing 3 steps on here. And you can go, wow, you are right. Let them be part of the process. And what's really cool is you practice when you subscribe to these theories and you have a great coach like these two, your practice gets better every single month. And you're like, wow, it's getting better all the time. That's what coaching does, type of a thing. One more thing I will say about this is like, there are big things that you miss every year. Every business does it. You're like, shoot, I forgot. I think an important checklist is this one. There are things that should be done every day. There are things that should be done every week, and there should be things that done every month, and there should be things done every year. I put on my calendar, like, I got to do this. Nope. Now you just have this regular checklist that these things get done, and you know that they have to get done, and you don't miss deadlines, and you don't miss license fees and all those crazy things. So just get fascinated.
Well, I love that. Get fascinated. And like Carlie mentioned, it's a living, breathing document. So you get it to the first 80% on your first go round, and you are going to find things that are missing from it, or like, oh, you know what, we should add on here. And the really cool part is when the team's participating in that checklist, they're going to be the ones who are making the additions and making the changes and getting more and more bought in. And the more they contribute to developing it, the more bought in they're going to be to the outcome of it. I think it's really important to make them simple and easy to understand, not overcomplicating a checklist. So Carlie, do you agree that the simpler, the better?
Absolutely. Simpler, better. Obviously, you want some detail so people know and can do the same thing and replicate it, but simple, much better. I also think getting the team involved, having them take it to the next 80%, getting them bought in will also make them hold each other accountable as teammates. So it won't just be you as the leader having to hold every single person accountable. Everyone else will be able to hold each other accountable too.
Okay, you're opening up a can of worms on that whole accountability thing, okay? Because we throw that around a lot. How in the world do you create accountability through these checklists?
Well, we always say E minus R equals C, right? Expectations minus reality will always equal conflict. And so one of the things we hear most often from teams is those little complaints or concerns of like, I'm not sure if so-and-so's doing everything they're supposed to be doing, or I wonder what she's even doing up there, or goodness gracious, she has to leave the room every time that we're doing a crown prep procedure. It's driving me crazy. And so the question I always pose to coaching clients, or what I always share with them, is E minus R equals C. Like, is the expectation clear of what it is that you're expecting of that person? And then the reality is just missing the mark, or have we not been clear with our expectations? And so now there's this false conflict because the person thinks they're doing a great job because all they've ever heard from you is great job today. Thanks. Great job today. Thanks. And so these checklists allow to have a lot of clarity, like Carlie said early on, around what the responsibilities are around the tasks for each role or each procedure or each department. And it's right there documented on paper. And it really eliminates that lack of clarity around the expectations themselves.
Yeah.
And once the clarity is there, if the expectations are not being met, it is written, and it's written down and documented, and it's a lot easier to bring it up and create those expectations or have that conversation if need be once it's written down.
Yeah.
And if it's out, if I'm Jane and I'm working up front as a patient care coordinator, and I'm the doctor wondering, what is Jane even doing up there? I see 3 holes in my schedule, and now there's storytelling starting in my head as a leader, as the doctor. I can go up front and I can see the checklist. I see it sitting right next to her. I can see the check marks. Okay, she's working on it. She's aware of what she's supposed to be doing today, and she's working on it. She's working through it. I can just peek at that and walk away. I don't even have to say anything because I know I have this added level of trust that the expectations are right there sitting next to her and she's following through. There's got to be a valid reason that my 2:00 doesn't have a patient in it yet. She's probably working on it. Same thing with my assistant team. If I have a new assistant and I feel like they're not getting it, or they don't always have the room set up properly, that's feelings. If we can have a checklist, it'd be great. Even if you had pictures of your setup for your crown prep, maybe the burr block, a visual, and it's right there in the operatory, hanging from a little ring on the inside of the cupboard door. She can take it down, or he, and set it down on, the side table. And when I walk into the room and I can see that checklist and the check marks on that laminated piece of paper, I'm like, I can trust with more authority that the room is probably set up properly and that we're on a better place than we were when I'm just trusting that they remember everything.
Oh, yeah. We're going to go there too, because I've only mentioned it 10,000 times in this podcast. I was a 3-time employee of the month at Applebee's, and it was one of my greatest accomplishments of all time. Now, here's why. Because once you know the system, you can rock it. You can connect with people. And one of the things that we had at Applebee's, if I have any Apple buddies listen to this, is most of it was pictures. I don't even know why I know this, but I still know it. The pickle was on the kale down on the right-hand side of the 45-degree angle. I don't know why, but it was never you put it wherever you want it type of a thing. The pictures, because I couldn't read half the words anyway, I'm not very smart, but like you can look at the pictures in a tray setup or anything. Now you can predictably create that. And now you don't tell yourself your story. I was having some post-traumatic stress when you were saying, oh, great job, when you really didn't do a great job, because I'm a wuss and I just want everybody to be happy. So I remember the old days. I'm like, great job. Good night, everybody. So I can do all the rest of the work after you guys leave so that I don't have to create conflict right now. The cool thing about checklists is that all of that goes away. You don't tell yourself a story. It's just a checklist. One more thing I'll add. I love what you were pointing to. There's so many benefits to checklists. One of them is a lot of them are asynchronous. Now, here's what that means. We have all these things going on with patients. You don't have to remember everything right now in the moment. It's a checklist. I can just focus on the patient. If the patient's crying, I don't have to worry about anything. And I can go back when the patient leaves and I'm still getting things done. We're still checking boxes. We're still closing files. They can be done after patient facing time is complete. They are so cool. It still moves the practice forward. I get overwhelmed sometimes thinking about all that I have to do in the moment. You don't have to do it all in the moment. You can take a deep breath. Now, one more thing I'll add, and I want to ask both of you. We hear this all the time. Well, I created the checklist, but nobody follows it. You do have to pull it out. You do have to make sure that it's used. But a lot of times, the reason checklists don't get checked, those boxes, is you're not auditing them. You don't have to audit them all the time, but somebody's got to look at them. Now, I'm kind of leading you guys with this question, but could you imagine a day where I didn't audit homework from my kids? I'm like, you do your homework, we're good. Or audit when they got home. Did you get home all right last night? No, there's got to be a certain level of, hey, there's going to be some auditing at some point just to make sure we did it, correct?
Absolutely. What I normally coach teams to do is I recommend that they laminate them. They use a dry erase, so we're not wasting a ton of paper. And then if we update them, we can just laminate them again. But I always had like a little folder or a little bin like on the way out the door or by the back door that we would all just kind of throw our checklist in, all leave together, know that we've all checked all of our boxes before we're out the door, and we can sleep well at night and know we're coming into, a nice clean office and a great day tomorrow. So.
Wait a minute.
And as
go
the
back
leader,
to that. Go back. You made people turn in their checklists?
Yes, we did. And as a leader, then the leader would always, take a look at them. We would wipe them off. And then the next morning, we use them again. So we did always look at them, held people accountable. We all knew that we were doing it. We did it at the same time. I, as a leader in practice, did the same thing. So I also had to turn my checklist in at the end of the day too.
Awesome. I'm so sorry, Miranda, I cut you off.
No, you're totally fine. I was going to say, and as a leader, I can hear leaders. I'm going to be you for a minute. I'm going to play devil's advocate. I'm a doctor. I don't have time to look through 7 checklists at the end of the day and make sure everybody, it doesn't have to be that scrutinous, right? The fact that it's there for one is a sign that they're doing it. And if it's expected to be there, they don't need to know that you're not like grading them. But if it's expected to be there, the likelihood of follow through is going to be much higher. So I don't want anyone to think that it's going to be this added level of stress. It's literally a glance to go like, oh, great. We checked everything off the list today. Same thing when you're using them in the operatories. I know doctors think I'm crazy when I work with teams where maybe their x-rays aren't awesome, or they maybe are still consistently having issues with not having everything available in the setup. And I just say, like, when you walk in the room, another level of accountability is like, I'll be back when that checklist is ready. And then you just turn around and come back after a few minutes. If you do that twice, the assistant's going to be working the checklist the next time, right? If you come back in and say, I'll be back when we have a PA of number 3, and then you come back. Like, let's not, if we continue to just go through the motions, we do limit this accountability. If we're saying the expectation is to use the checklist, if we're taking the time out of our day or out of our meeting time, wherever it is that we're developing these checklists together, the expectation is that we're going to use them. And so for me, if I have that expectation, then yes, they should be turned in at the end of the day, or we should be holding our team accountable. It's all about consistency. You can't ask for it one day and then not ask for it 3 days and then ask for it another day when you start to realize something's off track. It has to be consistent, and it can be positive feedback. You get everybody's checklist at the end of the day. At morning huddle the next day, there's a big kudos. I saw everybody's checklist. Thanks so much for that. Because people are really empowered by positive reinforcement.
Totally. Now, if you're like me, again, you're a wuss, you're listening to this going, well, I bought this practice from a dentist like 15 years ago. There was no assistant. If I did this right now, my team would leave and all of this. Look, the truth of it is a lot of practices we coach, they don't have a lot of this, or they do have it in place, but they've never been what you said, consistent about it. When you this is why you need a coach, because a coach will make you do this and you'll do it one time, then you do it a second time, then you do it a third time. 8 months into it, you're like, wow, everybody's doing it and they're turning in their checklist. What you ultimately create is this peer-to-peer support. People are looking out for you. It's not that they're like micromanaging each other. They're looking out for each other to say, hey, look, we got to support this. This is working. Like, things are getting better. Our days are running more smooth. Don't you think, both of you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, go ahead, Carlie. I wanted you to talk about it because you mentioned peer-to-peer accountability earlier, and the whole idea of like being able to pick up where someone left off. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think so. You're going to have this checklist out. It's going to be, on the table next to everyone in the office. Multiple team members are going to be able to come check things off. We're going to know, okay, Sally checked this part off, Susan checked this part off, and we're going to be able to do it together. And when you see your teammates checking some of the, checks off the boxes, you're going to then also want to jump in and be able to help do that too, and have that accountability of just self-accountability, saying, I don't want to make it just be all on my teammate.
Yeah. If somebody's in the weeds, you want to be able to step in and help. A lot of times you don't know what to do. If I'm a hygienist, I don't know exactly how to help a dental assistant or how to help the insurance coordinator. But if there's a checklist or something with very clear directive, then I can, if I have an hour where I have a patient that didn't show up, I can go support my teammates through their checklist.
Yeah. One of the things about dentistry there's so many pieces. There's a tiny piece here, tiny piece here, tiny piece here. And to try to get all of that organized in one big effort is tough. It's just creating checklists and systems for each one of these components. You make the complex more and more simple all the time. It's so great when you can do that.
Well, and you want position specific, department specific. You can go as big or as small with these as you want to. Like we talked about an AM, PM checklist. That's a whole office checklist ultimately. Who's turning on the lights? Who's turning on the radio? Who's making sure that the front door is unlocked? Who's making sure that the Keurig has fresh distilled water in it? Who's making sure that, the compressors are turned on in the morning? So that takes everyone from every department in the practice. Same thing with the end of day. There's going to be pieces of that are everyone. That's a whole team checklist. And then there's department specific checklists, right? There might be an assistant department checklist that's managing the equipment, making sure that we're doing our autoclave maintenance monthly and making sure that we're inventorying our operatories on a consistent basis. But then there's also all the way down to the minutia of specific roles, right? Like a patient coordinator isn't going to have the same checklist as an insurance coordinator.
Obviously, too, if you're just getting started with this, you're not going to have every single checklist under the sun that you're going to need for the office. So take it day by day, step by step. And once you do get a checklist for like every person or position in the office, when you're on your way out the door and everybody's plopping their checklist in the bin and one person doesn't do it, everybody wants to do a good job, right? Nobody's like coming to work wanting to do a bad job. So if they see all the other checklists and everybody else putting the other checklists in their bin, they're of course going to have their tail between their legs and walk back in the office being like, okay, I didn't do my checklist. And it's again, another accountability, placeholder, if you will, that makes it easier.
I absolutely love it. So I can't say enough about that. We could actually make this a 2-hour podcast, but we won't. I want some final takeaways, some final thoughts. Who wants to go first?
Miranda, go ahead, Carlie. Oh, rock, paper, scissors, shoot. You know me. I'll go first. So my biggest takeaway is definitely work with your team. So for doctors that are listening, I know we have a lot of doctors that listen, leaders that listen to the podcast. You can't make the checklists for your team. A lot of doctors want to be like, I'll just get it done. It'll be faster if I just go make these checklists and get it done. Number one, sorry, but you really don't know a lot of what everybody does in the office. There's so many little things that you don't know. And that's okay. If you want to get them to the first 50%, maybe, but really involve your team. Make sure the team is a part of the creation of the checklist, going all the way back to, hey, let's talk as a team about the things that are going to be most important to patient care and that happen the most frequently. You said earlier, Kirk, there's certain things that happen over and over and over. And it's like, this is happening again. Maybe that's one of the things that we need a checklist for. So work with the team to develop and prioritize what checklists are going to be most important, and then let them be a part of developing the checklist. Even let them be a part of how are we going to be accountable that we're doing these. Maybe they all like the idea of a bin. Maybe they have a better idea. But the more that your team is involved in the creation of them, the more they're going to use them and be on board with the process. So that's my biggest takeaway is bring the team into the mix.
I love that. And I absolutely agree. I would also say to just have it be a living, breathing document. Again, it can be changing in your practice any day, anytime. Obviously, we want to follow the checklist, but if we need to update it, we can. and always be able to revise them. So keep a digital version and then make sure that they are out and in use every day. And they're in front of our faces, and we don't just make them and keep them on the computer and never look at them again.
That goes for all systems.
Yeah. And I'll add this. Every time you create a system or checklist, I learned this from our coaches. This is, I mean, the cool thing about learning from the people you work with is they're brilliant. So you just listen to what they say. And our coaches came back from a conference. And one of the takeaways they had from a systems and checklist expert was every time you create a system or a checklist, you're saving thousands and thousands and thousands of hours in the future. Think about this. There's too much brain space that goes into what are the next steps. So there's so much value in creating a great checklist that guides your processes.
Well, and you just made me think about something else. So I have one more takeaway.
Please.
For team members that might be listening to this, or if you're sharing this with your team members, it's a bonus for you too. So I don't want this to come across as like our team members aren't doing their job, so we need to find a way to make sure they're doing their job, right? As a team member, I've worked in the front office. I've worked in hygiene. There's so much to remember. There's so much to do. I would say starting my career in hygiene, and Carlie, I know you've been in both realms as well, and so I can see you smiling. Starting off in hygiene and then transitioning to admin, I used to think that administrative team members had all the time in the world compared to me as a hygienist. And then I transitioned to working in the front office, and I realized, no, that is not the case. It never stops. So particularly in the front, I think is when checklists became so important to me as a team member, because there was so many things that I needed to accomplish, but the phone never stopped ringing and people never stopped walking in and out the door that I had to check in or check out or help with something or answer a question. And so having that checklist right by my side throughout the day was so helpful for me, regardless of if my doctor wanted to see it or not, to stay on track with the things that were really important to make sure that they were getting accomplished. And I even had one that had timestamps. So I would have kind of chunks of time where certain things, like I almost blocked it out within the checklist to do certain things during certain times, just to be even, more efficient and more productive with it if it was possible.
I love it.
I agree. With patients there in front of you, it does help you become more present with the patient or on the phone, because then you're not worrying about, oh, what was I just doing right before I answered this phone? Or what was I doing right before I was presenting this treatment plan? I need to go back. And it's there for you so that you can be more present in the office with the patients, which is why we're in the office.
And every now and then you have this moment where you're like, I don't think I have anything I have to be doing right now. And you're like, where's my checklist? I could check something off my checklist.
Yeah. Once you start using the power of the checklist, you're going to see it's transformative. It changes your life. It's not just limited to work, too. I like the idea. I heard somebody say this one. Never finish or never start a day before it's complete on paper. So this is what I do on Saturdays. On Saturdays, I create a checklist. Grab a white piece of paper and I put a little, do you guys ever put a little box right there? I put a little box next to it so that I know which field to go to, what to get done. And at the end of the day, it feels so good to accomplish something the way it was supposed to be done. And I don't know if I check the box and I also draw a line through it because it just
double checks.
It's double checks.
So it's funny that you say that because I use it with my kids. My kids don't like to do chores. What kids like to do chores. And if you're just like, I need you to clean your room today and I need you to do this today, I need you to do that today. But if I give them a checklist, that's like the 3 or 4 things that I need them to accomplish before 3:00 when we head to wherever we're going, they have the autonomy then to, at any point throughout the day, these are the 4 things that need to get done today, and check that box. And it has worked so much better with my kids than constantly reminding them, or have you done that yet? Have you done that yet? Have you done that? No, I forgot. Or no, I'll get to it eventually. If they have their checklist and then at the end of the day, it's done. Great. So it's the same thing with building in your team. When they're a part of creating it, they're going to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, I love it. Miranda, I got all my kids coming home this summer. I'm going to make them listen to this.
Make them
list. They're now getting a checklist every day.
Don't tell them I made you do it.
Yes, I will tell them. So it's so good.
I have a running one on my phone at all times because you never know. You might not be at home next to your checklist that's written down. So I just pop it in there. I mean, the grocery list, how many times do you go to the grocery and you forget something when you don't have the list?
Yep.
Totally agree. Totally agree. So thank you guys for both
We're
being on
changing
this.
lives, not just practices.
Oh,
Look at this.
and we're just getting started too. So if you're a dentist listening, I hope you're enjoying this. A couple things you might be thinking, well, I'm not good at this. I got a couple calls to action. So some links down in the show notes. We've got a handout for you. It's a tool. It's a guide. It's 5 systems every dental team must have, and you can download it. Take a look at it. It's some of the best stuff that we've learned from the people we coach. And then also the system support checklist. So if you're wondering, how does this really work and how does it come together? That's a great one. And then you mentioned, Miranda, downtime. Downtime is a hugely valuable piece of a dental practice. Hey, look, it happens. And a lot of team members don't know what to do, or doctors don't even know what to do. So we actually have a productive downtime task checklist, which means here's what to do when we have some downtime, because those things make the practice move forward. And if you have challenges doing any of this, we have a full-time therapist on our team. Her name is Gina. And she can help you. She's awesome. She's a great listener. I tell her things I don't think I've ever told another human being. She's such a great listener. And you won't feel so alone in this process. You can learn more about ACT or the To the Top community, or just if you need some tools just to make sure that your practice moves in the right direction. So thank you guys for listening. Thank you, Miranda. Thank you, Carlie, for being on. I get the great privilege of being around some great people who keep me on the rails. So hope you guys are enjoying this. If you enjoyed this, do us a favor, hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for things you guys want to see, because we're going to keep bringing it. And until we see you guys next time, or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.